This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Friday, May 3rd, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
More than 2,100 people have been arrested on college campuses across the country this week. I'm John Stolnis.
Former President Donald Trump responding to reports that he's falling asleep in the courtroom.
It's election interference at the highest level.
I'm Clayton Neville.
Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs has relegated a Civil War-era ban on most abortions to the past by signing a repeal bill. I'm Norman Hall.
Mistrial declared in an infamous prison case. Jackie Quinn has that story.
On Wall Street, stocks are coming off a winning day. Apple with a huge share buyback, and it's Jobs Friday. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
A man from Georgia was sentenced to 5 years in prison for his role in the Capitol riot. Ed Donahue, Washington.
The IRS has launched a new program for free online tax filing in 12 states. Hi, up in Jwani, Washington.
All ahead on America in the Morning. With more than 2,100 people arrested this week in college campus protests, President Biden makes his first extended comments on the growing unrest. Reporting from Washington, our John Stolnis.
Violent protest is not protected. Peaceful protest is. It's against the law when violence occurs.
Speaking at the White House, the president once again affirmed the right to peaceful protests, but said when they turn violent or disrupt campus life to make it impossible for students to learn, it's no longer peaceful.
Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest. Threatening people, intimidating people, instilling fear in people is not peaceful protest. It's against the law.
President Biden also decrying anti-Semitic rhetoric by protesters.
There should be no place on any campus, no place in America for anti-Semitism or threats of violence against Jewish students. There is no place for hate speech or violence of any kind, whether it's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or discrimination against Arab Americans or Palestinian Americans.
The president was asked if the protests are changing his policies on the war in Gaza and whether the National Guard should intervene. He answered no to both. On UCLA's campus, bulldozers finished hauling away hundreds of bags of trash and garbage left from what was the pro-Palestinian protesters' encampment, cleared out Wednesday night by police in riot gear. Barricades were removed after protesters refused to heed warnings by officers to clear the area. Hundreds were arrested. At Columbia University Tuesday night, New York's district attorney's office says one officer fired his gun as they cleared protesters out of an administrative building that saw more than 100 taken into custody. No one was hurt. And at Portland State University, a dozen demonstrators who had occupied a library were arrested after police cleared it out. None of them were students. In all, the Associated Press tallies arrests at 40 different schools since April 17th. On Capitol Hill, the House passing legislation that broadens the definition of anti-Semitism for the Department of Education in order to enforce anti-discrimination laws. Israeli President Isaac Herzog relaying a message to Jewish Americans in Ocean Away.
From Jerusalem, our eternal capital, I say to you, the people of Israel are with you. We hear you. We see the shameless hostility and threats. We feel the insult, the breach of faith and breach of friendship. We share the apprehension and concern.
Dozens of arrests yesterday at Stony Brook University in New York and at the University of Texas, and police stepping between opposing camps at the University of Pennsylvania and McGill University in Montreal. John Stolnis, Washington.
Former President Donald Trump is back in a New York City courtroom as his hush money trial resumes. Correspondent Clayton Neville has the latest on the criminal trial that surrounds alleged hush money payments.
The former president adamantly denies the charges against him related to falsifying records in connection to the alleged hush money payments. He also denies having an affair with Stormy Daniels.
There's never been any abuse like this before.
The former president spoke to reporters after the trial ended for the day, a day that brought another hearing surrounding Trump potentially violating a gag order in the case.
Other people are allowed to do whatever they want to us, and I'm not allowed as a presidential candidate, the leading candidate, the Republican Party nominee, and the one who's leading Biden by a lot, I'm not allowed to talk.
Trump was already fined $9,000 this week for a gag order violation, and Judge Juan Merchan didn't make an immediate ruling after yesterday's hearing.
Courtroom over this is just ridiculous. It's election interference at the highest level. Never been done before in our country.
As far as testimony, the jury heard a series of phone calls between former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen and Keith Davidson that Cohen secretly recorded back in 2018. Davidson, who's represented a slew of celebrities, was Daniels' lawyer. Cohen's heard on calls saying that he fronted the money paid to Daniels. And after the day in court ended, Trump took to social media to address media reports that he's been falling asleep in court. He said, quote, "I don't fall asleep during the crooked DA's witch hunt, especially not today. I simply close my beautiful blue eyes, sometimes listen intently, and take it all in." I'm Clayton Neville.
State abortion ban repealed. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. This is America in the Morning. Thanks for listening. On where that risk for severe weather might be today, let's check in with AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
The risk for severe weather will continue today in the central and southern plains as a boundary washes out over the center of the country with large hail, very strong wind gusts, and some tornadoes expected this afternoon and tonight from eastern Colorado and southern Nebraska, southward through Kansas, western Oklahoma, and much of west central Texas. A series of pesky disturbances in the area will be able to take advantage of warm and very moist air funneling in from the Gulf of Mexico, with severe thunderstorms again possible in north central Texas on Saturday. A potential lull in active storms arise for Sunday, but Monday and Tuesday bring the return of dangerous weather from Oklahoma through parts of the Midwest until the storm track pushes eastward. Speaking of the east, the eastern seaboard is in line for a mainly dry day today behind a cold front pushing southward into the mid-Atlantic, knocking several degrees off Thursday's high temperatures in major cities such as New York and Baltimore, while places farther to the south that don't have the front passing through, like much of North Carolina, can expect another spring scorcher. A massive storm arriving in the west will make for a wet weekend for many from the west coast into some portions of the interior starting this afternoon, with rain in mostly coastal sections of Washington and Oregon. This rain increases in coverage tonight into Northern California, with a cold front dragging down enough cold air to create snow at higher elevations. Rain and mountain snow continue through Saturday night into perhaps the high terrain of Southern California before the storm loses some intensity into Sunday. In Las Vegas, look for sunshine and warm weather today with a high of 88. However, Memphis, Tennessee faces a cloudy and humid Friday with a couple of thunderstorms and a high of 78. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. Saying the fight is still not over, the governor of Arizona has signed a bill repealing the state's law banning most abortions that dates back to 1864. Correspondent Norman Hall reports.
This ban needs to be repealed. I said it in 2022 when Roe was overturned, and I've said it again and again as governor.
Democratic Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs has relegated a Civil War-era ban on most abortions to the past by signing a repeal bill.
As they have for 160 years, extreme politicians came up with every excuse imaginable to maintain this draconian ban. A ban that was passed by 27 men before Arizona was even a state. A time when America was at war over the right to own slaves. A time before women could even vote.
Hobbs says the repeal is just the beginning of a fight to protect reproductive health care in Arizona.
Arizona women are still governed by a ban that leaves no exceptions for rape or incest, nor does it account for complications during pregnancy. We do not have guarantees that the basic right to contraception or access to IVF are protected.
But the repeal may not take effect until 90 days after the end of the legislative session in June or July. Abortion rights advocates hope a court will step in to prevent that outcome. Hobbs said the ban was passed by 27 men before Arizona was even a state, at a time when America was at war about the right to own slaves. I'm Norman Hall.
A mistrial has been declared in an abuse case brought by former detainees of the Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq. Details from correspondent Jackie Quinn.
The judge declared a mistrial after an 8-member civil jury deadlocked on the accusations that civilian interrogators conspired with soldiers to abuse detainees to, quote, soften them up for questioning by the military. Defense contractor CACI argued any liability for abuse would fall on the U.S. government. This trial's the first time a U.S. jury heard claims brought by Abu Ghraib survivors 20 years after those photos surfaced of smiling U.S. soldiers inflicting abuse during the U.S. occupation of Iraq. I'm Jackie Quinn.
When we return on America in the Morning, drivers shy away from EVs for this alternative after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. The Business Report is sponsored by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments is a fiduciary, always putting clients' interests first. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger with Friday Business.
Wall Street opens this morning after a winning day for stocks yesterday. The Dow popping 300 points. Bond yields came down as the Fed eased worries about an interest rate increase coming. That pushed stocks higher.
I think the market taking its lead from bonds, which managed to relax after the Fed. We do have to get through the jobs report. It feels like there's still some hesitation ahead of that 50-50 on the S&P. We're sitting there again. We first got there in February. I keep talking about it. It's sort of a ready position for the next significant move.
CNBC's Mike Santoli. It is Jobs Friday this morning. The Labor Department's employment report for April comes out 8:30 Eastern. Investors paying close attention to wage numbers. The more businesses pay their workers, the more people spend, and that props up inflation. And that can keep the Fed from cutting interest rates. Apple reported slightly better than expected quarterly results after the closing bell last night. It's making a massive stock buyback, the largest of any company ever, at $110 billion. Shares ticked higher after hours. iPhone sales dropped, and some investors just want Apple to make a real improvement to the iPhone to get it selling again.
What I really want to see, honestly, is a reason to get the next iPhone, and it's going to be AI. iPhone's half the revenue. What's going to be the thing that makes people say, I need another iPhone? That's the thing that could get the stock out of the range.
Ritholtz Wealth's Josh Brown on CNBC. Rivian shares jumped yesterday. Millions of dollars are coming from the state of Illinois to help expand its plant in Normal. That's where Rivian makes the electric delivery vans that it sells to Amazon.
Seems folks are after hybrids rather than the full EV these days.
Yeah, the switch is real. Just look at Ford's April sales, which fell compared with April of last year a little bit, but people are definitely buying fewer ICE or internal combustion engine vehicles.
ICE vehicles down 9.2%. Where are people shifting? Well, they're clearly shifting towards green vehicles, if you will. EV sales in April more than doubled compared to April of last year, up 129%. Hybrid sales up 59%. Look at the F-150 hybrid, the Maverick hybrid, best months ever. Hybrids and EVs now make up 14% of Ford's monthly sales. A year ago, guys, it was 8%.
CNBC's Phil LeBeau. On today's watch list, it is Jobs Friday, as we mentioned. The big April employment report could move the markets today. Earnings are coming from Fubo TV and Hershey, which is facing record high prices for cocoa. New in theaters, Screen Gem's horror film Tarot, plus Universal's The Fall Guy. Universal is a sister company to CNBC.
CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. When we return on America in the Morning, auditing the auditors at the IRS after these messages. Back now on America in the Morning. The man who bragged he fed an officer to the mob has learned his fate in a Washington, D.C. court. Correspondent Ed Donahue with the story.
Jack Whitten struck an officer with a metal crutch and dragged him headfirst face down into the crowd on the lower west terrace of the Capitol. Later, in a text message, Whitten boasted he fed them to the people. Prosecutors say 20 minutes later, Whitten kicked at, threatened, and threw a construction pylon at officers, saying, "You're gonna die tonight." In court, Whitten showed remorse for what he called his horrible actions and told the judge he has changed. The judge told Whitten the videos of him attacking police were gruesome, adding he was out of control. Ed Donahue, Washington.
It's a case of auditing the auditors. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports on IRS audit rates and who it impacts most.
The IRS says that it's taken steps to address a wide disparity in audit rates between Black taxpayers and other filers. A study from January 2023 involving university researchers and the Treasury Department found that IRS data-driven algorithms selected Black taxpayers for auditing up to 4.7 times the rate of non-Black taxpayers. Officials with the IRS said that discriminatory audits degrade trust in the tax system. Additionally, the IRS said that it plans to raise audit rates on companies with assets above $250 million to 22.6% in 2026. That's up from an 8.8% rate in the tax year 2019. Haya Panjwani, Washington.
America in the Morning for Friday, May 3rd, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Production assistants Christian Matos. Our senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
The number of people arrested in connection with protests on college campuses continues to grow. I'm Shelley Adler.
President Biden is lumping two vital partners together with a pair of adversaries. Sagar Magani, Washington.
There's a timeline surrounding construction of the Key Bridge in Baltimore. I'm Clayton Neville.
A fiery crash in Connecticut will keep an interstate closed for days. I'm Pamela Furr.
Evacuations prompted as flooding hits the greater Houston area, and results of a study on what Americans think about communist China.
There are still plenty of jobs. I'm Rita Foley.
Another 80s TV series gets a modern big screen adaptation this week. I'm Kevin Carr.
Back after these messages. We'll have a report on some of the extensive flooding in and around the Houston area coming up a little later in the show. First, beginning along the West Coast, here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
A wet weekend, at least at times, for many along the West Coast and into some interior sections. For today, the storm blasts onshore during the afternoon hours with rain for mainly coastal sections of the Pacific Northwest. That rain becomes more widespread tonight in places such as Northern California, where an advancing cold front is even expected to pull in enough cold air to produce some snow at higher elevations. Speaking of that cold air, cities such as Seattle and Portland that had highs near their historical averages in the mid-60s on Thursday and should again do so today can expect temperatures no higher than the mid-50s this weekend, with rain and mountain snow continuing through Saturday night as far south as the high terrain of Southern California before the storm loses some intensity as it advances eastward into Sunday. Elsewhere, the risk for severe weather continues today for the central and southern plains, with large hail, very strong wind gusts, and some tornadoes not out of the question this afternoon and into tonight from the Big Bend of Texas to southern Nebraska and across much of Kansas. Showers of rain and snow track across parts of the northern plains and the upper Midwest as well. Farther to the east, a complex disturbance brings a couple of thunderstorms to areas from the eastern half of Texas through much of the south and across the Tennessee and Ohio valleys, with showers instead for much of the Great Lakes region, including eastern Wisconsin and upper and lower Michigan. In the east, look for a largely dry day as a cold front backs southward through the mid-Atlantic, bringing a decidedly less warm day to places such as Philadelphia and the nation's capital that reached 90 degrees on Thursday. That's the weather across America. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. as President Biden publicly stated that anti-Israel demonstrations on college campuses that violate school policies will not be tolerated. The number of arrests made have escalated. Hundreds were taken into custody at UCLA when police dismantled an illegal encampment, and there were arrests at Portland State University in Oregon when authorities removed occupiers from the library. As correspondent Shelley Adler reports, covering the university protests are student reporters getting a media education on the front lines.
The sound of protesters chanting at UCLA, where more than 200 people were zip-tied and taken away by police. The Associated Press has tallied arrests at 35 schools since the protest began at Columbia University on April 18th, and that number stands at 2,000. Some of the campus protests popping up over the last 2 weeks have led to agreements with administrators to consider the protesters' demands.
The response by police has been predictable yet horrific. It's been across the country. They have shown their faces as fascist police force.
We are demanding that our universities and our institutions that have financial and academic investments in the Israeli apartheid state end those connections.
We're going to remain here until the university meets our demands. We have set up for the long haul.
More often, though, they have led to arrest after demonstrators refused to disperse or vandalize property.
They broke our barriers repeatedly, clearly in an attempt to kill our community. Campus safety left within minutes. External security the university hired for backup watched, filmed, and laughed on the side as the immediate danger inflicted upon us escalated.
The protest movement on college campuses has become a training ground for student journalists. Columbia journalism student Cecilia Blotto is getting experience that most veteran journalists know all about.
Separating my student identity to my journalism work has definitely been something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. And I think at the moment, I'm definitely just trying to report as accurately and as fairly as I can and place my sentiments about the conflict aside.
The 21-year-old from London is grappling with complicated editorial decisions for the first time.
We've really realized the importance of having reliable, accurate, and fair coverage of what's happening. And student journalism is very important in this situation.
Another journalism student at Columbia, Carla Mendy, summed up their experience perfectly.
Trial by fire might be one of the terms one could use for this.
I'm Shelley Adler.
President Joe Biden is taking heat after he called close American ally Japan xenophobic while attending a Washington, D.C. fundraiser. Correspondent Sagar Meghani reports the president made the off-camera remark while saying India, Russia, and China should embrace immigration more.
Our allies and partners know well, in intangible ways, how President Biden values them, their friendship, their cooperation, and the capabilities that they bring across the spectrum on a range of issues, not just security related. They understand how much he completely and utterly values the idea of alliances and partnerships.
At a fundraiser, the president said the U.S. is thriving because it welcomes immigrants. But why are Japan, India, China, and Russia having economic issues? He says because they're xenophobic and don't want immigrants. What exactly did he mean?
He was saying that when it comes to who we are as a nation, we are a nation of immigrants. That is in our DNA. And so you've heard the president say this, and you've heard us say it more as administration. It makes us better. We are stronger for it because of the fact that in our DNA, we are a nation of immigrants. And I think that's probably very important to note as well.
Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre and National Security Spokesman John Kirby say he was making a broader point.
The broader point the president was making, and I think people all around the world recognize this, that the United States is a nation of immigrants, and it's in our DNA. We're better for it, we're stronger for it, and we're not going to walk away from it. And that's the broader point that he was making.
The remarks came within a year of the president hosting the leaders of both India and Japan for lavish state visits.
Prime Minister Modi, welcome back to the White House. Japan and the United States stand together.
And Kirby says the U.S.'s friends know the president values them.
Utterly values the idea of alliances and partnerships.
Sagar Meghani, Washington.
What do Americans think of China? Results of a new poll coming up a little later in the show. Officials in Baltimore have a price tag for construction of a new bridge following the deadly collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Correspondent Clayton Neville has the latest.
This week in Baltimore, a fifth body was found. A red construction truck discovered in the debris, and the body of Miguel Luna Gonzalez was inside. 6 road crew workers were killed in the collapse. The Key Bridge crumbled after it was hit by a cargo ship. Wreckage still being cleared from the water.
You've already heard about the Chesapeake 1000 for the Chessie. It's the largest salvage crane available on the eastern seaboard. Now today, I want to talk about Chessie's partner.
Maryland Governor Wes Moore introducing the Gus.
And that's the nickname for the largest hydraulic grabber in the entire country that is now here in Baltimore.
Rear Admiral Shannon Gilreath with the U.S. Coast Guard says crews are working carefully with precision cutting.
By using precision cutting techniques, we are able to institute all those cuts simultaneously so that that's the safest possible for the salvers themselves, so that they're not trying to cut something and then another section collapses while they're making that cut.
The Port of Baltimore says that the Dolly container ship that hit the bridge should be removed by May 10th. That should allow more traffic to pass through the port. The timeline for a new bridge, much longer, of course, but now that timeline becoming clear. The Maryland Department of Transportation plans to rebuild the Francis Scott Key Bridge in just over 4 years at an estimated cost of between $1.7 and $1.9 billion. I'm Clayton Neville.
Coming up, travel nightmare along I-95, plus areas of Texas underwater. We'll have those stories and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. I'm John Trout. Welcome back here with America in the Morning. Travel nightmare awaits motorists along a busy corridor just north of New York City. Pamela Furr reports that both sides of Interstate 95 will be closed in southern Connecticut after a fuel truck exploded and damaged an overpass.
The crash happened around 5:30 yesterday morning in Norwalk when a fuel truck, car, and tractor trailer collided, causing the fuel tanker to burst into flames.
If all goes well and monitor this, we should have two-way commuting back on I-95 as early as Monday morning.
That's Governor Ned Lamont talking to reporters. The good news is there were no serious injuries or fatalities reported, but the heat from the burning fuel damaged the bridge beyond repair, so it will have to come down.
That could probably take 24 hours or a little longer than that. Then they're going to have to take a second look at repaving to make sure that the road is safe and secure.
The governor says crews are hoping to reopen both sides of traffic by Monday morning. Meanwhile, he's filed an emergency declaration and hopes to get federal funds to replace the bridge.
I know what an incredible inconvenience this is for people, and all I can ask you to do is stay away from that area as best you can. The traffic jams are horrendous.
The fuel tanker was carrying about 8,500 gallons at the time of the crash. I'm Pamela Furr.
Mandatory evacuations were ordered in parts of Texas and around Houston due to flooding rains that started on Thursday and are expected to last into the weekend. Some roads, including Highway 59 in Polk County, are already underwater with more high water to come. More than 7 inches of rain fell in the greater Houston area yesterday. The American Red Cross has already opened shelters, and police are warning people not to drive at night for fears of flash flooding. Shifting gears, a new survey is finding out what Americans think of communist China. Correspondent Haya Panjwani has the story.
An annual Pew Research Center survey found that 4 in 10 Americans now label China as an enemy. That number is up from a quarter 2 years ago and reached the highest level in 5 years. The Pew report samples 3,600 U.S. adults. Half of them think of China as a competitor, and only 6% consider the country to be a partner. These findings come as the Biden administration is trying to stabilize relations with the country to avoid clashes, while still trying to counter the world's second largest economy. The report also found that roughly half of Americans think limiting China's power and influence should be a top U.S. foreign policy priority. Only 8% don't think it should be a priority at all. Haya Panjwani, Washington.
The number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits remains historically low, despite interest rates sitting at a 2-decade high. More on the numbers from correspondent Rita Foley.
The number of Americans applying for unemployment is historically low, and it didn't change last week. Overall, 1.7 million Americans are on unemployment, the same as the previous week. The unemployment rate is 3.8%, and it's now been below 4% for 26 months in a row. That's the longest such streak since the 1960s. There are signs that the labor market may be softening. There are 8.5 million job openings, and although that may sound like a lot, it's the lowest number of vacancies in 3 years. And companies have been announcing more job cuts, mostly in technology and media. Companies that have recently announced layoffs include Google's parent company, Alphabet, Apple, and eBay. I'm Rita Foley.
Machines that learn from their mistakes are the holy grail of AI, but it's not always that easy when it comes to training robots. Now, a new robot training program has just made that task much easier. Here's Chuck Palm with that in today's Tech News.
Engineers at Northwestern University have developed a new artificial intelligence algorithm designed specifically for smart robotics. From SciTechDaily.com, the robots, when tested against other AI platforms, consistently outperform state-of-the-art models with this new algorithm. It works so well, in fact, that robots have learned new tasks and then successfully performed them within a single attempt. Machine learning algorithms, researchers and developers use large quantities of big data, which people carefully filter and curate. This works well for typical AI like large language models ChatGPT and Google Bard, but does not work for AI systems like robots. Robots collect data by themselves without the luxury of human interaction. This could dramatically reduce the time it takes to program a robot to be released to the public. Tell us your thoughts at allthetoptech.tech. I'm Chuck Palm.
Friday Sports has arrived with Robert Workman on America in the Morning.
NBA playoffs first round, the Pacers polished off the Bucks 120-98 to advance in 6 games, their first series win in 10 years. Obi Toppin had 21 points, TJ McConnell 20, both coming off the Indiana bench to provide a spark. Next up, it's the Knicks, who outlasted the 76ers 118-115. New York led by 22 in the first quarter last night, but Philly came back to grab the lead by halftime and stretch that to double digits, only to have the Knicks tie things up going into the fourth. Jalen Brunson got 14 of his game-high 41 points in the final stanza. Stanley Cup playoffs first round, the Bruins and the Maple Leafs are going the distance. Toronto took Game 6 at home 2-1. William Nylander with both goals for the Leafs. Joseph Wall made 22 saves and came within a tenth of a second of a shutout. Game 7 tomorrow night in Boston. Baseball, the Mets clipped the Cubs 7-6. Francisco Lindor didn't start for New York on Thursday afternoon after leaving Wednesday night's game with flu-like symptoms, but he came off the bench to serve up a pair of 2-run doubles, the latter winning it in the 10th inning. Marlins shaded the Rockies 5-4 in 10 for the series sweep. Giants got by the Red Sox 3-1. Mike Yastrzemski put one into the bullpen for San Francisco, just like his Hall of Fame grandfather Carl did so many times at Fenway Park.
It's special no matter what. The amount of history that's here, especially for my family, it's always special to just play here in general, and to be able to hit a homer is really cool.
Astros hammered the Guardians, Orioles overpowered the Yankees, and the Rangers shut out the Nationals. Nathan Eovaldi and the Footlongs with a 4-hitter, though Eovaldi had to leave the game in the 6th with groin tightness. And the 150th Kentucky Derby is Saturday afternoon at Churchill Downs. Fierceness, who won the Florida Derby in a romp, is the pre-race favorite. That's Friday Sports.
Robert Workman on sports. Well, up next, actress brings important topic to U.S. senators. Plus, check out this fall guy at the theater. Those items when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. Here with America in the Morning. Actress Halle Berry went to Capitol Hill to talk to a bipartisan group of senators to push for research and education into menopause. Correspondent Margie Zaraletta files this report.
Halle Berry has been public about painful symptoms she's experienced while going through perimenopause, which is when a woman's estrogen levels start dropping leading up to menopause.
The shame has to be taken out of menopause. We have to talk about this very normal part of our life that happens.
Berry says her doctor shied away from the topic, but she was insistent.
I said, I'm in menopause! Okay? And that's why I'm having this issue. And he said, oh my God, I could never say that to you. Look at you. You don't look like you're in menopause. I could never say that. And if I said that to all of my female clients, they'd punch me. And again, I knew that is why I'm here doing this work, because it has to be destigmatized.
Berry says it's time to destigmatize talking about menopause. A proposal by Democratic Senator Patty Murray of Washington and Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska calls for $275 million for clinical trials, doctor training, and raising awareness of menopause issues.
Our doctors can't even say the word to us, let alone walk us through the journey of what our menopausal years look like.
I'm Archie Zaraletta.
The calendar still says spring, but this weekend is the unofficial start to the summer movie season. And debuting in theaters is a remake of a 1980s TV show. Kevin Carr has a sneak peek at The Fall Guy.
The latest adaptation of a TV series with few similarities to that series is The Fall Guy.
I'm just a stunt guy. I might fall from a tall building.
If you love the old Lee Majors show about a stuntman helping people on his days off, I have no idea if you'll like this movie, because they're very different animals. I mean, this is a tongue-in-cheek action movie about a stuntman, but the similarities end there.
One last stunt. Going down in a blaze of glory.
The film follows a retired stuntman brought back to work for his ex-lover/director in a sci-fi epic blockbuster. He then has to track down the missing star of the movie.
We need you to find him.
Why me?
You're a stuntman. No one's going to notice whether you're here or not. No offense.
I mean, some taken.
Yeah, the stunts are fantastic. That's to be expected. But it's held together with the flimsiest of scripts. It feels like one of those stunt show spectaculars performed at theme parks with the story thrown in as an afterthought and ends up being simultaneously convoluted yet cliched and predictable yet baffling.
Let's make some trouble.
Get out of my head.
Stars Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt have chemistry and are fun with the comedy, but their characters at times don't even seem necessary for the film. We're left with a slick-looking movie about making movies that appears to have no idea how movies are actually made.
This is an epic story. Of cosmic proportions.
The Fall Guy gets 2.5 thumbs up out of 5. I'm Kevin Carr, and that's the way I see it.
And that's our show for today, Friday, May 3rd, 2024. America in the Morning is produced by Jeff McKay. Production assistants Christian Matos. Our senior producer, Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.